Good evening. I'm Swagata Chakraborty, a fourth-year PhD student. And today my topic of discussion is, could user-centric advertisements be a solution to encourage sustainable apparel consumption? Next, please. So next slide. Yeah. So to begin with a bit of background about my study. So the founders of the brand Patagonia, the sustainable apparel brand, has mentioned that in order to produce one organic polo t-shirt, it requires 2,700 liters of water, which is about 900 people's minimum daily requirement of water. And along with it, it also produces 21 pounds of carbon dioxide and other wastes. So this is an eye-opening example of, if a sustainable apparel could be this damaging to the environment, how damaging could be unsustainable apparel, right? But despite this, unsustainable apparel consumption still prevails. And one of the reasons being sustainable apparel are expensive, and price-sensitive consumers have difficulty in purchasing those apparel. And also, sustainable apparel are often limited in styles and varieties, where consumers feel like, how would I express my style and self-expressions through sustainable apparel? And often this apparel are made out of reused or recycled materials, so often people anticipate social disapproval for wearing those clothes. And also, consumers have become skeptical about using a sustainable apparel because they think that the sustainable brands are just manipulating their emotions to extort money, where the products are not actually environmentally friendly. Next, please. But despite this, the sustainable apparel brands are still communicating about their advertisements through environmental cues, rather than communicating how sustainable apparel could be beneficial for the consumers in terms of their affordability or social desirability. So next, please. So identifying this practical problem and identifying a research gap on how user-centric advertisements could be used to encourage sustainable apparel purchase intentions, I proposed a conceptual model depicting how user-centric advertisements communicating the concerns for affordability and social desirability could be processed by the consumers, evoking favorable affective response toward the sustainable apparel and translating into sustainable apparel purchase intentions. Next, please. So based on the theoretical framework of elaboration likelihood model, I proposed my conceptual model. So according to the elaboration likelihood model, central cues, which are often the written information, are processed through central routes or processed through extensive thinking, producing more enduring and permanent attitude toward the object or issue being evaluated. On the other hand, peripheral cues, which are often visuals or attractiveness of the object or the issue, are processed through peripheral routes or superficially, producing less enduring and temporary attitudes. Now, when individuals are highly involved with an object or with an issue, and the object or issue are very, very relevant for them, they follow the central route and evaluate the object very extensively. Whereas when they have low involvement with that issue, they process it through peripheral route. But when we increase the involvement or motivation of the individual, we can actually convert a less enduring and temporary attitude towards a more enduring and permanent attitude. Next, please. And we have studies have also shown that when we use peripheral and central cues together, we can actually increase the involvement of individuals more, and we can make them evaluate the thing through a central route of persuasion, evoking high effective response. And it's true for sustainable products as well, which can encourage purchase intention for sustainable products. Next, please. So based on this discussion, we came up with this conceptual model where we are saying that user-centric advertisements conveying concerns of consumers of affordability and social desirability conveyed through textual and textual with visual cues would be processed centrally. And when consumers have low involvement with environmental issues, they will evaluate the visual cues through peripheral routes. And because these are user-centric advertisements, both the peripheral and central processing would evoke favorable affective response towards sustainable apparel, translating into a high purchase intention for sustainable apparel. And we also propose that this processing, peripheral and central, would mediate the relationship between message modality and affected response, and message modality and purchase intention for sustainable apparel. Next, please. So we conducted a between subjects online experiment with 3 treatment groups representing the 3 modalities: textual, visual, and textual with visual modalities. And the participants were randomly assigned to one of these treatment groups. And female millennials were recruited from Amazon Mechanical Turk, and the usable sample size was 344. Next, please. So this one is the user-centric advertisement with textual modality, which is conveying how 5 clothing items could be equivalent to 30 outfits. So tapping onto the dimension of affordability and social desirability. Next, please. This one is for the visual modality, and next, please. This one for the textual with visual modality. Next, please. So we used all extant measurement scales for measuring our research variables. And next, please. We also controlled for fashion innovativeness and need for cognition because this could have confounding effects in our model. Next, please. So we found that our sample was very similar to the US national population of female millennials, which was good. Next, please. And all the measurement scales were valid and reliable, as you can see from this slide and the next slide. Yeah. Next, please. And in terms of the hypothesis, majority of the hypotheses were supported. Specifically, we found that user-centric advertisements were primarily processed centrally, evoking desire for sustainable apparel and lessening the burden towards sustainable apparel. And this desire was able to positively influence the purchase intention for sustainable apparel. Next, please. As hypothesized, we actually found a marginal significance of the influence of visual cues on peripheral processing, but even the visual cues were processed centrally, which was interesting but good. Next, please. And we found that both textual and visual cues could evoke desire for sustainable apparel. Next, please. And in fact, the central processing of the textual with visual cues could evoke desire for sustainable apparel and decrease the boredom towards sustainable apparel. So essentially, it's the processing, the central processing that creates a desire for sustainable apparel, which is very interesting finding from the study. Next, please. And as you can see from this plot, all the modalities were processed centrally, especially for people who had high involvement with environmental issues, but also for people who had low environmental issues. Even for the visual cues, the score was higher than the neutral point. Next, please. So in terms of the practical implications, we can see that this user-centric advertisements could be a alternative way to encourage purchase intentions for sustainable apparel, where consumers are not made to feel that they are making sacrifices in order to protect the environment. And in terms of the theoretical contributions, we filled significant gaps in the literature on how user-centric advertisements could encourage sustainable apparel consumption intentions. And we contributed to the theory building of elaboration likelihood model, specifically in terms of how user-centric user-centric advertisements could be processed, and extending that to how it can evoke certain emotions in terms of desire and boredom, and how it can translate into purchase intention for sustainable apparel. Next, please. So that was all about my presentation. Thank you so much. So if you have any questions, we can discuss that in the roundtable discussion.